He looked me dead in the eyes, his voice calm, like he was asking for extra gravy, and said, "The best Christmas gift would be if you just died." That was my son, my only child. So, I gave him exactly what he wanted, but not before I canceled their mortgage, drained every account, and left something on his desk that made his perfect little life collapse in seconds. You want your mother dead. Be careful what you wish for. It happened 3 days before Christmas, in the house I helped buy but never truly belonged in. I was folding towels in the laundry room, steam rising from the dryer as I stacked the warm fabric into a neat pile. The door was cracked open. I hadn't meant to eavesdrop. I wish I hadn't. Michael's voice came through low and bitter. Honestly, the greatest gift this year would be if she just died. My hands froze mid. I stared at the red towel in my hands like it had turned to glass. Jessica's voice followed, casual, like they were discussing socks. You said it, not me. The silence that came after was worse than the words themselves. My son, my only child. I waited, heart pounding, hoping he'd laugh it off, say he was joking, say anything human, but he didn't. He just sighed. It's exhausting, her being here all the time. We can't keep doing this. I pressed my palm to the counter to steady myself. The towel slipped. I didn't care. She's not dying anytime soon, Jessica said with a sigh of her own. Guess we'll just have to suck it up until then. I backed away from the door before I screamed, or cried, or collapsed. My knees barely held me up as I climbed the stairs to the in-law suite they so generously let me live in my room, the one they never let me decorate, the one without locks. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at nothing until my vision blurred. My fingers reached for the notebook I kept in the drawer beside the bed, the one with grocery lists and reminders to refill my blood pressure meds. I turned to a fresh page and wrote it down word for word. The greatest gift this year would be if she just died. I read it again, then again, trying to convince myself I'd misheard, but I hadn't. My own son, the baby I carried through 28 hours of labor, wished me dead so he could have a more peaceful Christmas. The man who cried at his wedding, who called me his hero at his father's funeral. I thought about all the times I'd left extra money in his kitchen drawer when they were tight that month. The babysitting, the groceries, the 6 figures I gave them to buy this house, all of it meaningless now. I looked around my small space, the off-white walls, the single dresser, the folded blankets in the corner, for when the grandkids wanted a sleepover. They hadn't wanted one in months. My throat tightened, but no tears came. Just an ache, a deep, hollow ache that spread through my chest and settled into my bones. I stood and walked over to the closet, opened it, and stared at the suitcases I hadn't touched since moving in 3 years ago. The small one still had the airline tag from the cruise I canceled when Michael lost his job. I bent down, unzipped it, and pulled out the envelope I'd taped inside the lining years ago, the one labeled Plan B. My late husband always said, "Trust people with your heart, not your money." I hadn't listened, but I remembered his words when I took out the co-ownership contract and the deed with my name still on it. Michael never filed the updated paperwork, never paid the lawyer to finalize removing me, said he'd get to it. He never did. I pressed the paper flat on the bed. My hands didn't shake anymore. They felt steady, calm, like they finally remembered how to protect me. I picked up the pen and wrote 4 more words under Michael's quote. I heard you, Michael. I stayed in that room most of the night, barely blinking. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard his voice again. The greatest gift this year would be if she just died. My own son. I didn't know what stung more, those words or the way Jessica didn't even flinch when he said them. Like it was just true. Like my death would be a relief. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen island sipping lukewarm coffee, pretending my stomach wasn't twisting in knots. Michael walked in first, rubbing his eyes like a child who'd overslept. "Morning," he muttered. I didn't answer. I couldn't. If I opened my mouth, I might scream. Jessica followed in her usual matching set and full makeup, barely glancing at me as she scrolled on her phone. I watched them move around the kitchen like nothing had happened, like they hadn't shattered me the night before. "You okay?" Michael finally asked. "You look pale." "Just tired," I said. "I didn't sleep much." "You should try melatonin," Jessica offered without looking up. "It works wonders." I wanted to laugh. I wanted to stand up and ask, "Does melatonin fix having a son who wants you dead?" Instead, I stirred my coffee and nodded. My eyes drifted to the living room, where the Christmas tree blinked softly. The kids had made paper snowflakes last week and taped them to the windows. I'd helped. I always helped. Every year since I moved in, I made sure the holidays felt magical for them. Stockings, crafts, even the stupid matching pajamas Jessica insisted on for Instagram. 3 years ago, when Michael called in tears after his loan fell through, I sold my home, the one their father and I built together. I wired $120,000 to his account that same week. And when the realtor asked whose name was going on the deed, I said both. Michael promised I'd always have a place. You'll live with us, he said. The kids will love having you close. I believed him. God help me. I believed every word. I moved into the in-law suite with nothing but 2 suitcases and my husband's favorite chair. Jessica didn't want any of my old furniture in the house. She said it didn't match her aesthetic. Now, I couldn't walk into a room without asking permission. Don't move the couch. Don't rearrange the pantry. Don't use that bathroom when we have guests. I was a ghost in the house. I paid for a silent, careful ghost who folded towels, paid for groceries, and bit her tongue every time Jessica rolled her eyes. Can you pick up the kids from school today? Michael asked, shaking me out of my thoughts. Jessica's got a nail appointment, and I need to take the car in. Sure, I said, like I always did. My voice was steady, but inside I was crumbling. I took another sip of coffee, just to have something to do with my hands. He looked at me, really looked at me. Are you mad about something? Why would I be mad? I asked. No reason. You just seem off. I'm fine, I said. Just let me know what time. He nodded and left the room. Jessica didn't say a word, just stood by the fridge eating yogurt straight from the container and texting, her acrylics tapping. I wanted to smash that phone against the wall. Instead, I picked up the mugs, washed them in silence, and wiped down the counters. My chest ached, but I kept moving. That's what mothers do. We keep moving. I went upstairs to the guest room, my room, and opened the drawer with the documents I hadn't looked at in years. The deed, the co-ownership agreement, the notarized letter from the lawyer. They never filed to remove my name. They said it wasn't necessary, that we were family. I stared at my signature, so neat, so trusting. My reflection in the window looked older than I remembered. Tired, I touched the edge of the paper and whispered, maybe it's time I remembered whose name is still on this house. I sat on the edge of the bed for a long time, just holding that deed like it was the last piece of proof that I hadn't imagined all the years I'd given, all the sacrifices I'd made. My fingers moved without thinking as I reached into the drawer where I kept old mail. The kind no one ever bothers to open unless something's gone wrong. The top envelope had the mortgage company's logo on it. I tore it open slowly, not because I was nervous, but because deep down, I already knew it wouldn't be good. Past due. I read the words twice, then again, just to be sure. They were 3 months behind. 3. I stood up fast. Like my body couldn't sit with that kind of betrayal. I walked over to the tiny desk in the corner of my room and opened my laptop. I hadn't checked the bank account in a while, the one I set up when I first moved in, just in case they needed help. I stopped keeping track after the second year because Michael always acted like my money was just there if needed. Apparently, it had been needed, repeatedly. Thousands gone. Quiet little withdrawals Michael made without ever asking. The joint account I opened to help with emergencies had become his personal ATM. I leaned back in the chair and stared at the numbers, sick to my stomach. Groceries, utilities, random charges from home improvement stores. I wasn't just living with them, I was funding them. Every time I thought I was helping, I was actually just cleaning up their mess in silence. I heard the front door open downstairs. Jessica's voice floated up, too loud and too happy for someone who couldn't pay the mortgage. The shoes came. Finally, Michael laughed. Don't tell my mom. She freaked. She's not even up here, Jessica said. She's always in her little cave. My hands curled into fists. I walked to the stairwell and stood where they couldn't see me. That emergency account is empty, Michael said. Completely drained. I checked this morning. What about her other one? Jessica asked. The one you said she used to buy Christmas gifts. She barely uses it. She's old school. Still writes checks for everything. Maybe she won't even notice if you pull a little. We're only talking a few hundred. That's not the point, he snapped. I'm not robbing my mother. I waited for him to follow that up with something that sounded like regret. He didn't. He just added, I'll figure something out. I backed away before they saw me. I sat back down at the desk, heart pounding so hard it was hard to breathe. I clicked into the other account, the one I hadn't touched since Robert died, my small safety net. Just over $18,000, still there, untouched, hidden from them because, for once, I'd listened to my gut instead of my heart. I closed the laptop and stood, pacing the room, whispering to myself, "You're not crazy. You're not overreacting. They've been bleeding you dry." My head buzzed with questions I didn't want answers to. How many times had I bailed them out without even knowing it? How many groceries were bought with my card? How many bills paid just this once with money I wasn't supposed to touch? I thought that was the worst of it. But then I heard my son's voice behind me. "Hey, Mom, you got a second?" I turned slowly. He stood in the doorway, all fake smiles and easy charm. "Sure," I said, keeping my voice even. "What's going on?" Jessica and I were thinking maybe after the holidays we could talk about rearranging some of the finances, just to make things smoother. "Smoother for who?" "For all of us," he said quickly. "I mean, you've got money sitting in that emergency account. Maybe we should consolidate, put everything under one umbrella so nothing falls through the cracks, so you can manage it." "Well, yeah, I mean, I already handle most of the bills. It just makes sense." I let the silence hang there long enough for him to shift uncomfortably. "I'll think about it," I said. "But that money is still mine." "Of course," he said. "No," I cut in. "You meant what you said. And I heard you. All of it." He blinked up. "Nothing," I said quietly. "I just need some air." I walked past him, down the stairs, and out the front door before I lost it. The cold air hit me hard, but I didn't care. I walked around the block, trying to calm the storm building in my chest. Every step felt like a countdown. I wasn't the one falling apart anymore. They were, and they had no idea how close I was to walking away and taking everything with me. I walked until my legs burned. When I came back, no one asked where I'd gone. Michael was on the couch watching a game. Jessica was in the kitchen lighting one of those overpriced candles she loves to post online. I went straight to my room, locked the door, and pulled out the envelope I'd taped under the bottom drawer 3 years ago. Robert's handwriting was still on the label, Plan B. My heart ached just seeing it. He always said to hope for the best but prepare for the worst. I hadn't thought I'd ever need this. I opened it slowly, like it might explode. Inside was everything. Copies of the ownership deed, letters from the lawyer, a list of the account numbers he made me keep separate. He'd insisted we protect ourselves, even from family, he warned. Especially from family. I hated him for being right. I called Sophia, the lawyer Robert and I had trusted for decades. She picked up on the third ring. "Elaine, is everything okay? I need to know if the paperwork we filed on the house is still valid," I said. "The one with my name on the deed." She paused. "Of course it is. You never signed the removal. Michael never filed it. So, you still legally own 40%? "Yes." "Why?" I sank into the chair and whispered, "Because they want me dead, Sophia. And they don't even hide it anymore." Her voice dropped. "Tell me what happened." I told her everything. The conversation I overheard, the drained accounts, the past due mortgage, and now they wanted control over my last savings account. They're not even pretending to care anymore. "Elaine, we can act. You have power here. You're not trapped." "I don't want revenge," I said. "I want out, but I want out on my terms." "Then we draft a notice of intent to sell. I'll have it ready tomorrow." I closed my eyes. "Make sure it goes to both of them. I want this to hit hard." After we hung up, I opened my suitcase for the first time in years and started packing. Not in a panic. Not because I was scared, but because I was done. I folded each piece of clothing like I was folding away the version of me that tolerated too much for too long. I packed light. Just the essentials. One suitcase, one handbag, my passport. I called the airline and used the points I'd been collecting for a decade. The woman on the other end sounded cheerful when she said, "And where will you be flying, Miss Thomas?" "Paris," I said. My voice didn't shake. One way. As I zipped the suitcase, Michael knocked. "Mom, got a second?" I kept packing. Sure, he stepped in, saw the suitcase, and frowned. "Going somewhere. Thinking about it." "Is this about earlier?" "Look, I was just frustrated. Things are tight right now." "I know they are," I said without looking at him. "That's why I'm leaving." "You don't have to do that." "No." I turned and met his eyes. "I really do." "Is this about the money?" "Mom, we'll figure it out. You don't need to stress." I tilted my head. "So, why did you empty the joint account?" He blinked. "It was an emergency." "Which one? The mortgage, the credit cards, or Jessica's new shoes?" "Don't do this," he said, voice getting sharper. "We're family. You stopped treating me like family the day you said my death would be a gift." His face went pale. "You heard that." Every word. I walked past him and opened the top drawer, pulled out the legal envelope, and handed it to him. "What's this?" My answer. I watched his hands shake as he opened it. You're forcing a sale. Or, you can buy me out. Your choice. You can't be serious. Michael, I'm flying to Paris in 2 days. Believe me, I've never been more serious. He stared at the paper. We don't have that kind of money. Then you better find it, I said, because Plan B is already in motion. I woke up the next morning to the sound of Jessica screaming. At first I thought something had happened to the kids, but then I heard Michael's voice from downstairs. I don't know, okay? I paid it. Well, I thought I did. I walked to the top of the stairs and saw them both standing in the kitchen, faces red and wild. The Christmas tree in the living room was dark. No lights, no music, no fake fireplace crackling on the TV. It was December 24th, and the power had been shut off. This can't be happening, Jessica snapped, slamming the fridge door. We have guests coming tomorrow. My mother is flying in from Seattle. We'll figure it out, Michael said. Just calm down. Calm down. Her voice cracked. Did you forget to pay the electric bill? No, I thought, Mom. He stopped himself. You thought, what? I said, walking down the stairs slowly. Michael looked at me like a deer caught in headlights. You thought I'd pay it. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. I mean, haven't you been? No, Michael, I said. Not anymore. He rubbed his forehead. You're really doing this now? You told me to disappear. I said, this is me, disappearing quietly, responsibly, just out of the way like you wanted. Jessica stared at me. You can't just cancel payments without telling anyone. You mean, like you canceled my presence in this house months ago? I walked over to the kitchen, opened the cabinet, and pulled down a wrapped tin of cookies I'd baked for the girls. You made your choice. I'm making mine. I placed the tin on the counter and turned back toward the stairs. What are we supposed to tell the kids? Michael called after me. They'll wake up tomorrow to a freezing house and no lights. Maybe tell them the truth, I said, that some gifts come with a cost. And you ran out of credit. I spent the day finishing what little packing I had left. Folded sweaters, 2 scarves, 1 good coat. My passport was already tucked into the front pocket of my carry-on. Around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I crept downstairs while they were arguing in the garage. I placed a small gift for each grandchild under the tree. Just 1 each. No ribbons, no glittery bags, just simple brown paper with their names written in thick marker. Inside each box was a letter from me. Not a goodbye, just love, memories, and a reminder that none of this was their fault. I went back upstairs and sat on the bed with the suitcase beside me. For the first time in weeks, I smiled. But deep down, something felt off. My phone buzzed just before dinner. Sophia had emailed the official notice to Michael's and Jessica's personal subject line, Notice of Intent to Sell, Elaine Thomas. The timing was perfect. The lights never came back on. Around 7, Jessica stormed into the kitchen, grabbed her car keys, and left without a word. Michael followed her outside, yelling, I didn't go down. I stayed in my room, listening to them unravel, piece by piece. At 4 a.m., I rolled my suitcase quietly through the hallway and down the stairs. The house was dark and cold, and no one was awake. I stood in the entryway for a moment, hand on the door handle, heart pounding but steady. I opened the door slowly and stepped outside. Snow had started falling, not much, just a thin, dusty layer on the front steps. I pulled the door shut behind me and walked to the edge of the driveway where the airport shuttle was already waiting. As I climbed in and shut the door, I looked back once. The tree in the window was still dark, not a single light blinking. That was their Christmas. And I hadn't even given them my real gift yet. I landed in Paris just past noon and didn't cry once on the flight. Not when the plane lifted off, not when the captain welcomed us to Charles de Gaulle, and not when the man beside me asked if I was meeting family. No, I'd said, pressing my lips into a smile. I left them behind. I wheeled my suitcase through the airport with steady hands and a quiet mind. The taxi ride to the apartment was long, but I didn't care. I watched the city blur past, bright holiday banners fluttering across the buildings, people rushing in coats, lovers holding hands. No one knew who I was. And for the first time in a long time, that didn't scare me. It comforted me. I met with Lucille, a friend of Robert's from his university days. She handed me the keys to her place and said, "Stay as long as you like." I thanked her and meant it. I unpacked just enough, 2 drawers, 1 small closet. I made a cup of tea, opened the window, and just sat. That night, I walked along the Seine with my coat zipped up to my chin. The air stung, but it made me feel alive. I wasn't floating in anyone's house anymore. I wasn't invisible. I was here. I'd barely closed the door behind me when my phone buzzed. Michael, then Jessica, then again missed calls, messages. I didn't open them. I didn't have to. I already knew what they were saying. The next morning, I opened my email and saw the one from Sophia. Subject line: "You might want to read this." She'd forwarded the thread from the mortgage company. Michael had called in a panic. The mortgage was in danger. They were in default. "Elaine Thomas is not responding," he wrote. "She must be traveling. She isn't part of the household anymore." Sophia had responded simply: "Miss Thomas remains a co-owner, and she is well within her rights to act accordingly." I read it twice, then sent Sophia a message: "Please handle everything through legal channels. I'm unavailable for direct contact." I'd been watching the Eiffel Tower sparkle from the living room window when my phone rang again. This time, it wasn't Michael. It was the mortgage lender. I let it ring twice before answering. "Is this Miss Elaine Thomas?" "It is. We're calling regarding a Kawanda property currently in arrears. We've received your legal filing, but we'd like to confirm your intentions moving forward." "My lawyer will handle everything," I said. "Please direct all communication to her, Miss Thomas. Are you aware that the other party has expressed difficulty with the current payment obligations?" "Yes," I said, "I'm aware. And you still wish to proceed with the intent to sell?" I stared out at the street below. "Yes, I do." After I hung up, I turned my phone over and placed it face down on the table. I wasn't running. I wasn't hiding. I was claiming space for the first time in years. I made a list on the back of a grocery receipt. One column was titled "Things They Took," the other "What I Have Left." The first list was long: time, money, trust, holidays, my voice, my place. The second list was shorter: dignity, proof, control, a passport, and now Paris. The next morning, Sophia emailed again. "They're begging to negotiate. Are you ready?" I didn't reply right away. I stood at the window again, fingers wrapped around my mug, watching the world move forward like I'd never existed in theirs. My son thought he could break me, but what he didn't know, what neither of them knew, was that I wasn't just gone. I was building a life where their access had been revoked. One breath, one page, one email at a time. I waited until the first week of January, not out of kindness, but because I wanted the silence to stretch. I wanted them to sit in it. Cold nights, overdue bills, no idea where I'd gone, or if I was ever coming back. Then, I mailed the letter. Not an email, not a text, not a call. A real letter, sealed in a plain white envelope with Michael's name on the front in my handwriting. I knew he'd recognize it. I paid extra for next-day delivery. And then I waited. It didn't take long. 2 days later, my phone buzzed with an incoming video call from him. I didn't answer. A minute later, another from Jessica. Then her text: "How dare you?" I smiled and set the phone down on the coffee table. I'd written the letter with care. No rage, no insults, just truth. Hard, uncomfortable truth. I'd detailed every dollar I'd contributed, every payment I made, every sacrifice they'd forgotten. I wrote about the night I overheard them, about the power outage, the silence, the lies, and then I wrote the final paragraph. "This house was a gift. So was I. You lost both. You can either refinance the mortgage on your own, or sell and downsize. Either way, I'm done covering for people who only see me as a burden. Consider this your final Christmas gift." Michael called again and again. I finally answered on the third try. "What were you thinking?" He snapped. "You mailed the letter like this. You gave me no choice. You humiliated us. You humiliated me first, repeatedly. We didn't mean it." "Yes, you did." I kept my voice steady. "And now you get to live with it. Do you have any idea what you've done?" "I gave you exactly what you asked for." I disappeared. He paused, and for a second, I thought I heard him choke up. "You blindsided us, Mom." "No," I said softly. "You just weren't paying attention." I ended the call before he could respond. I sat back on the couch, took a deep breath, and looked out the window at the narrow Parisian street below. A couple walked by laughing. A man in a scarf carried a baguette under one arm. Life kept moving. I hadn't thought about revenge when I wrote that letter. It wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming something that had been chipped away at for years, my worth. That letter wasn't written to hurt. It was written to end the bleeding, to stop pretending that love means letting yourself be drained dry. Later that night, I got one more message from Jessica. Just one sentence: "You've ruined us." I read it twice, then deleted it without replying. Their ruin wasn't my doing. It was their entitlement, their manipulation, their belief that I'd keep giving no matter how cruel they became. My only crime was finally saying no. I poured myself a glass of wine, sat by the window, and opened the little notebook I'd started keeping. At the top of the next page, I wrote one word, freedom, and just below it, another. Finally, I hadn't planned on responding. I really hadn't. But when Michael sent that last message, "You owe us at least a conversation," something inside me snapped. I stared at the screen, heart pounding, lips pressed tight. Then I called him. One ring, two. He picked up. "You finally decided to talk." "This isn't a conversation," I said. "It's clarity. We're your family. Mom, you're the people who watched me cook, clean, pay, babysit, and still whispered that I was in the way." He went quiet. "You said the greatest gift would be if I just died. Remember? I didn't mean it like that, but you said it. And you meant it enough to let her say it in front of you. And you didn't stop her. You're twisting everything." "No," I said calmly. "I'm finally seeing it straight. We didn't ask you to leave like that. You ghosted us, left the kids confused. I left letters for each of them. I made sure they'd never blame themselves. Can you say the same? We're drowning, Mom. The mortgage is underwater. Jessica's mom backed out of helping. We're selling furniture to stay afloat. You built a house on a foundation I paid for, and now that I've stepped away, it's collapsing. That's not on me. So what? You just abandon us." "No," I said. "I'm holding you accountable. We're not bad people. You're not evil," I said, "but you were selfish. You were entitled, and you treated me like a live-in ATM with no feelings. That's over. What do you want from us?" "Nothing." "That's the point," he sighed. "So that's it. No, you'll hear from Sophia. She's drawing up the documents. The house will be sold. You'll get your share after I take mine back. What's left is yours to rebuild with." "Rebuild with what? There's barely anything left." "Then maybe you'll finally understand what it's like to start over." I hung up. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from relief. I stood up, walked to the mirror above the fireplace, and looked at myself for a long time. Not to check my hair or makeup, just to see who I was now. Not a ghost, not a doormat, not the woman who quietly disappeared to make others comfortable. I was someone who drew a line and stood behind it. I was someone who stopped bleeding for people who never offered a bandage. That night, I went out for dinner alone at a little restaurant near the Rue Claire. The waiter asked if I was celebrating something. I almost said no. Then I smiled. "Yes, I am." I didn't explain. I didn't owe him that. I didn't owe anyone anything anymore. When I got back to the apartment, I poured a glass of wine and sat down to write in my notebook again. This time, I titled the page, "What I Will Never Do Again." I wrote, "I will never beg to be respected. I will never explain myself to people who only listen to respond. I will never call it love if it leaves me empty." My phone buzzed once more. A photo from Michael. The Christmas tree, half-lit, ornaments sparse, kids asleep in the background. No message, no caption, just the image. I stared at it for a few seconds, then turned my phone off and closed the notebook. I wasn't swimming back. That bridge had burned, and I didn't miss the smoke. The final papers came through on a Tuesday morning. The apartment was quiet except for the faint ticking of the kitchen clock. I sat with the documents in front of me, rereading every line. It was official now. The house was sold, the debts settled, the accounts cleared. Michael and Jessica would receive what was left. It wasn't much, but it was fair. My part had been removed cleanly and legally. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel sad either, just still. I packed the folder, slid it into my carry-on, and checked the clock again. I had a train to catch. As I zipped the suitcase, my phone buzzed. It was a voice message from Michael. I hesitated, then pressed play. "You win," he said. His voice was flat, tired. "We're moving into an apartment near Jessica's mom. Kids don't understand what's happening. Neither do I, really. But I guess it's what we deserve. If that's what you needed, you got it." I didn't reply. Not because I didn't care, but because I finally understood something. His pain wasn't mine to manage anymore. I'd spent years absorbing the guilt, the blame, the heaviness of everyone else's chaos. I wasn't doing that anymore. I stood at the window, watching the Paris traffic glide by. Then, I turned, wheeled my suitcase to the door, and locked the apartment behind me. The taxi driver helped me load my bags. "Business or vacation?" he asked. "Closure," I said quietly. He nodded, like he understood. Maybe he did. At the station, I found my seat, sat back, and watched the city blur past. I thought about the woman I used to be, the one who kept the peace, the one who swallowed her voice to keep the family together. That woman was gone. She didn't just leave, she evolved. My thoughts drifted to the kids. I missed them. That part still ached, but I'd left each of them something. Letters, photos, memories. One day they'd read those letters. One day they'd understand that love isn't measured in how much someone gives until there's nothing left. It's in the boundaries they draw to survive. I pulled out my notebook one last time. At the top of the last page I wrote, I didn't just walk away. I walked toward myself. I stared at those words, then added one more line beneath them. Let them learn from the echo of my absence. As the train rolled forward, so did I, not toward revenge, not toward regret, but toward peace. The kind you earn, not the kind you beg for.